Hi everyone, and welcome to this TFUKCon bonus interview. My name is Sam, Samsformers from the internet, if you don't know, and today I'm joined by a pivotal person in the Transformers community, Bobby Skullface. Bobby,
divisive, controversial, maybe.
All the good words, good words. Yeah, but. Dude, thanks for joining me. Thanks for agreeing to do this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I get a lot of support in the UK. So I'm very, very, very appreciative of everybody.
Yeah, and when the bits you've done with the TFUK cons in the past, I missed the first event where I think you did a Zoom interview. I think from what I remember, and I know that went down well. So yeah, and I know a lot of people. Some of the events I go to, I was sat at my first TF Nation, I think it was 3 years ago, and sat in the huge auditorium where they do all the panels. And I was sat, and about three seats down, a guy sort of leaned over to me and went, Were you on Nerd Rage last week? And I sort of just yes, I was.
Wow.
And it was the one he obviously listens, and it was the one I did when I was over, obviously on the show. So that was quite cool.
No kidding, that's crazy.
Didn't know who he was. He knew who I was, but
that's cool. Though.
No, I thought it was cool. But yeah, it's listened to a lot. It's popular content, isn't it? So I think it gets all round.
Yeah, we're very grateful, man. We're very grateful that we have a pretty dedicated audience, and and always trying to welcome more people to the cult. Yeah.
Well, I think when you put out good stuff, people don't appreciate it and watch it. So it's a testament.
Yeah.
So right, I've got some questions around the Transformer world. I'm not going to ask you who you'd invite round for dinner.
Please don't.
But we'll see. I've got some, and anything else you want to, add into it, and any other questions back then. And I've got a few stories I could probably add to it as well.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd start off early. I think we're both, from the same era, born in the same decade, and this is where we got all this love from. But when you were younger, what were the things that you enjoyed when growing up? Not just Transformers, but movies, music, cartoons, that kind of thing.
So I think that like my first two loves that I can remember are Star Wars and music. I remember seeing like Thriller, the music video, like when it premiered, and like and I remember being like terrified, but also like completely fascinated. And I think that has kind of stuck with me in some regard. And then Star Wars was always around as a kid. I think it was like a consistent. I think in a lot of things, I think it's all of it, right? That I was into Transformers, G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, Mask, all that kind of stuff. I think ultimately it all served the same purpose for me. I had a not a boohoo for me, but my childhood life was very much like tumultuous, like it was in turmoil. It was always like this moving thing, and I think I kind of longed for consistency, and I think that a lot of those shows were there for me at 4:00 every day. I could count on them every day. It was like, when a lot of things didn't seem like as dependable, and in spite of how hard some factors tried to make it just wasn't, and I think that all of that stuff kind of offered a little bit of normalcy for me in some weird way.
And I get that. For us, it was more Saturday mornings was when we got a lot of the cartoon. We used to have a TV show going live, and Saturday morning it was called, where it was just from like 8 till 12, and that's where we got a lot of the cartoons and after school. So I get that. I think you're always ready. Yeah, like, we couldn't miss it, could you? Because if you missed it, you had to wait till next week. Not like now, where you can watch it whenever you want.
Yeah, but I think for me though, it was like, like I was at my dad's Monday through Friday. I was at my mom's Friday through Sunday. My dad worked 24-hour shifts, so my grandma was pivotal and instrumental and always there. And sometimes I had days with my dad. Sometimes I had days with my mom. Sometimes I had days with my grandma. Sometimes I had days with my dad and my grandma. My mom moved houses like 5 times inside of 2 years. And I think all of that stuff, just how fast it was all moving and how chaotic it seemed. I think that I longed for something stable. And I think that the fact that it was just scheduled entertainment was something that I don't know, that I kind of benefited from, just having something that could count on.
Yeah, I get you. And I think, and because for that, we were lucky, I think, in the 80s with how much there was. We were blessed with such wonderful shows, movies, shows, cartoons. So, yeah. I think it was a good time for that, wasn't it? Yeah, I think you're right. I just thought of... So, we'll circle back later to this, but were the toys for those genres the same as the cartoons, as in, you say about a stability of entertainment? Did the toys do the same sort of thing, as in not took you away, but gave you something the shows did?
Yeah,
did
no,
as well?
I think it did take me away to an extent. Like, I think it was a distraction for me.
Yeah.
And I think I genuinely loved the stuff too, and I loved, most importantly, I loved the characters. And sometimes even if I didn't love the character, I loved the dynamic between characters. So this is an easy one, right? This is like a low hanging fruit, but like I never took to Wheelie. I never cared for Wheelie as a character, but I enjoyed the banter between Wheelie and Grimlock, or who, you know what I mean? So like even the characters that I didn't like, the role that they played in the larger thing, I kind of appreciated. And I think largely, it was all, anything, anything but to think about, my life that I had,
I think we all had a bit of that. That's why it was such a good escapism as well, wasn't it? Taking those toys out in the garden or upstairs or wherever it might be, and just you get in your own little world for a while, don't you? I think now we use TikTok for that, but it was a lot more fun where you could create your own little story with the toys, wasn't it, and mimic the cartoons. I know I used to replay the cartoon in real life, but with the toys, and I thought that was always quite fun.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and they were, it was kind of like there was some stuff before it, right? Like Planet of the Apes and like some little stuff here and there. But I mean, largely we were the kind of like beta testing for that sort of product placement,
Yeah.
And it worked like a champ. And I don't think it's ever worked that well since, to be honest, with few exceptions. Like some of the stuff that came on later on, Turtles, and then maybe for like the next generation, like Pokemon, but like largely like the stuff that my kids are into childhood entertainment wise, like the product placement merch for them is not there, and it's not really something they're interested in.
No. Yeah, I watched the Toys That Make Us TV shows, and it shows how much of a marketing engine and all that was, and it worked ever so well. And I guess we were lucky, we got a good product to play with and watch. Our parents probably not so much because they had to spend money, but they sold toys, so it kind of worked for everyone, didn't it?
The sun don't shine if sun don't shine, as they say.
No. So okay, well, it's not why, but what grabbed you with Transformers then? What was it that made you fall in love with that?
So
that
I think
in particular.
So I think it was one thing I think that Transformers had that none of the other franchises that I was into had was the plethora of characters that all had character traits defined. Right. Yep. So when I compare it, maybe G.I. Joe is comparable, but like I love Star Wars as a kid, but Star Wars, you kind of knew the core cast and then some bad guys. And then there was other characters that seemed cool, right? Like Boba Fett seemed cool as a kid, but there was no real understanding of who he was or what he was about or where he had come from or any of those sorts of things when I was a child. So like Transformers had all of these characters kind of defined, like, whatever, it could be the smallest thing, and oftentimes it was, but like it was enough, just the one character that might, I don't know, like, be a smart aleck, or another one might be like, a conspiracy theorist, and I'm just pulling things out of my mind, but it was like one little beat. but you could take that beat and apply it to the character and extrapolate it. A lot of my love for this stuff is purely based on the character and the character traits. It really has a very, 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 very little to do with the functionality or even the level of quality of the toys. All of that was an extension of my own imagination and love for those characters.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. So if you try and relate the character to the toy in a sense. So if you watched the first episode of the cartoon and you fell in love with, I can't think of what, Sideswipe. When the toys were all, you were at the shop and the toys were there, would it be the car mode, or it's the character that you would pick? So
100% the character.
The character, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I didn't care. Like, I didn't care about a lot of them, even as a kid, like, and I was young, dude. Like, I was, 3 years old in 84, I was born at the tail end of 80. And like, so a lot of that stuff was too sophisticated for me. Like the mini bots and stuff I could do with no problem, and some of the larger ones I could do, like Soundwave was an easy one or whatever. But a lot of that stuff was far too complicated. Like, I could handle Sideswipe, but I couldn't handle Jazz, so to speak. Like, so in a Megatron or something like that, like, forget about it. Like, it's out of the question. So like, and I didn't care. It never impacted my quality of play. Because, like, oftentimes, I've said this in the past, but oftentimes I would have Sideswipe, and then I would have like a Matchbox style car of a Lamborghini, and then when I was playing, I would pretend that he transformed, and then I would use the Lamborghini toy to kind of continue playing it because in the well, not even that. It was in the cartoon. It was, and that was it. So I couldn't sit there and fumble about with this thing.
10 minutes.
Like I would lose interest because it wasn't like the character to me. It wasn't like the fiction. It wasn't like the show. And the show, it's instant. And on this, it took so long, so I would get frustrated. And I mean, I think that probably if anybody's listening that is familiar with my content, I'm an impatient person, and I tend to get frustrated when I'm pushed to my patience, or my patience is tested. So like the alt modes, none of that stuff had really any, and even though they were robots, like, even the robot factor didn't play into it at all. Like, I didn't care. To me, they were as much a living, breathing thing as G.I. Joe. I never viewed them as a robot. They were just characters that look like robots, but like, like, I'm not into mech. I don't have any Gundams. I don't have any Evangelion. I don't have any of that stuff. None of that stuff means anything to me because the character never spoke to me, So like, I'm not attracted to robots. I'm attracted to interesting character and story, and that's the stuff that kind of progressed me. And the rest of it, like the gimmicky stuff of it, never had any impact on me. I think it's cool, like, outside, objectively looking at it from 20 feet away. I think it's cool, but it never had anything to do with why I loved it.
No, it wasn't the driving sort of force around it.
Correct.
Okay. So I'll rephrase my next question then slightly. So I've got favourite toy as a kid, but I'll say character then as a kid.
So my favorite characters were the Stunticons, and then ironically enough, Dead End, and I that's why I kind of think that Fans Toys thing is personal. But the I loved them, and I loved the Dinobots, and I loved them because once again, it was probably reflective of my childhood and the things I was kind of looking for and longing for. But like, they were loyal to one another. They were a crew first. To me as a kid, the Dinobots, it was more important for the Dinobots to be Dinobots than it was for them to be Autobots. And same thing for the Stunticons.
Yeah.
Like, to the Stunticons came first. Stunticon business came first. Stunticon loyalty came first. The crew came first, and then Decepticons. And then, and then it kind of kept pushing out from there. But like, same with the Dinobots. Like, I think if Optimus gave an order or Grimlock gave an order, as long as they weren't opposing, they were more than likely going to go with Grimlock. Like, and I think that was that's something, and to this day, I mean, not to get into too deep a territory, but loyalty is something that I really, I am a very loyal person, and I also I really value that trait in other people.
It's a fundamental trait, isn't it? I think.
Correct.
If that goes away, then there's not a lot to stand on.
Can be hard to come by, though, Sam. Can be hard to come by.
Yeah, well. So this next one, and is going to go back to a comment you just made about transformation. So a toy, we'll go toy that you didn't have, that you always wanted that you never had. There's one specific one you can remember.
So I think that my dad. So my dad struggled financially, and especially in the beginning after my mom's divorce, because my dad got custody. It was a whole ugly thing, and I have plenty of other podcasts that you guys can listen to get the full sad details on that. But as a result, my dad never wanted me to feel like I was going without. So there's pictures of me at 10 years old where I have, the Millennium Falcon, and I have Optimus Prime and Galvatron and everything else, but but there's no couch. There's no dining room table. There's no, my dad went without so that I never felt like I had to. But what he would do is put bumpers up. So he was very, and rightfully so, very concerned with me starting a new collection, or getting into something else, because he knew that money was finite and there wasn't always enough to go around. So, the stuff that I always wanted as a kid that I didn't have was pretty much the collections that I was never kind of afforded to get into. I never had Thundercats as a kid, so that was always something I thought was cool from the outside. Silverhawks as a kid I never had, and I always thought it was cool from the outside. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I've sort of rectified in my older age and have those collections now. But unfortunately, it's by Super 7. What are you going to do?
So there was two for me too. Well, one of my most vivid memories was of not having a toy. It was the Skyfire or Jetfire, depends who you want to talk to. I never had that, probably because it was one of the more expensive ones. But I always have a memory of a friend that came round and had it, and I can to this day see him running up the stairs with like a grail, and we playing with it for hours. But one that I spoke to my mum about only last week, because I don't know why I thought about it, but I said, why did I never have a G1 Megatron? Because I got all the others, or had all the others. And I've got a memory of my nan's house having it or being bought it. And so my mum bought it for me. She saw it out of the box, saw it how fragile it was, and went, nope, you're not having that, and took it back.
Yeah.
And said, that's too expensive for you to break.
Right.
So I never had it. Which is probably right to do, because I would have probably broke it within minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think similar to you, I had quite a few things, but I can remember being told you can't have that as well. You don't want, what do you want He-Man for? You've got Transformers, or however it might be.
Right. Right. But as a parent, it's completely fair and reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't have everything. Right. Obviously, when you're 7 and 8 years old, you don't think of that, do you? But
right.
Anyhow, that's funny. So I've got favourite memory, but not favourite. Just a poignant memory of Transformers as a kid, whether it's around toys, the cartoon, or something. I mean, I've heard a few of your stories prior. That are quite good, but just something that stands out, I guess, of an incident or or something around the toys or the cartoon, or
so and I have a ton, man. But I always try to think of stuff I haven't told before. So I'll tell this one. Years later, long after G1 had completed, sometime when I was in middle school, I think late middle school, the Sci-Fi Channel, I don't know if you guys had that over there. I imagine you did, but
yeah, we've had it. Yeah,
okay, so the Sci-Fi Channel started playing reruns of G1 cartoons. I don't know how they worked it out, but they were able to do so for some time. And I don't know how I got wind of it, but they did it in the mornings. They played it in the mornings, and I could catch one episode before I went to school, and I would usually set a blank tape to record the second one. and I was trying to work on sort of like archiving all of them, you know, and in my 8th grade brain, it was like, you know, and then I'll have them on VHS forever. Nothing will impact VHS ever, you know. But there was another guy in my neighborhood, and my neighborhood was a funny place to grow up. But there was another guy in my neighborhood who was kind of hung around with some of the tougher guys, and he was super into Transformers also, and it just came out casually. I think sometimes those geeky conversations come out like almost like a secret language in front of you know, normal people, and you know, like somebody steps on a bug and somebody says, "I thought they smelled bad on the outside," and then two people dart each other a look, you know. And it was something like that, and somehow we got to talking about it, and I was like, dude, they're actually replaying the episodes in the morning on Sci-Fi Channel. I'm recording him, and he started coming over to my house. And my house was kind of like a clubhouse, but he started coming over to my house, and we would watch them together. And we were older, so like, you know, we found certain humor in it that we didn't find when we were kids, and we found certain stuff like almost, you know, more like blatantly disrespectful. You know, then we did, you know, like when, you know, Starscream says something, Megatron would just backsmack the brakes off of them, you know, and like, you know, as 8th grade, you know, 8th grade, 9th grade kids, like now it's like, that's hysterical to us because it's just so blatantly disrespectful.
Yeah.
But you know, as a kid, you're probably like, oh no, you know, but like, so like that, those are like memories that I cherish that were later on in life, but you know, interesting nonetheless.
Just looking at it a different perspective, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I watch them now, and you think back to some of it, and well, and I think it's good.
Also, like at that time, like, you know, like you know, your life transitions, and I'm starting to get into different pastimes, and girls are far more interesting, and you know, and all that kind of stuff, and you know, to have this like little pocket of my childhood like pop up that way, you know, as I started to experiment with other things in life, like, I don't know, there's something special about that in some way.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Well, it's nostalgia, isn't it? And it is a powerful thing, and I think it's good. All right, one more just before we fast forward to now. But did you go to the cinema or the movies to watch the '86 movie?
I did. I saw it with my dad. Yeah. You know, and loved it. You know, just like most of us. But like, I have some complicated thoughts about it now as an older person. but like, you know, I remember like it turned my world upside down, you know, like everything that was right in the universe was now wrong in some way. Like, you know, like I had seen Prowl get hit by 100 different laser shots, and, you know, he'd get knocked on his backside and he'd pop back up again, you know, and now all of a sudden this time is for real, you know? So that stuff, my dad hated. My dad, like, he wasn't like, it's not like he watched the stuff, but he would catch an episode here or there with me. My dad was pretty involved in my life when I was a young person, but like, he hated Starscream, hated him with a passion, hated his voice, hated his treacherous nature. You know, my dad believes in the good soldier, you know, like, but so my dad, I remember my dad started clapping when Starscream died, like in the theater, like,
in the cinema.
He like started like clapping, and like my dad doesn't care about Transformers. He's never seen that. That's the only real Transformers movie he's ever watched from front to back, you know. But he started clapping in the movies. And then the other thing that I kind of like vividly remember, the soundtrack I vividly remember. And there was something else I was going to, I mean, Optimus Prime's death, I think, you know, I think that bummed me out when I was a kid. And yeah, I mean, it was just one other like odd thing. It's just odd if you kind of follow my content and kind of know about my, you know, and I talk about my dad or whatever, but like, you know, my dad was kind of like a, if you're there on time, you're late kind of guy. Like, you know, being on time is being early. And for whatever reason that day we had something else going on, you know, it might've been a baseball game or whatever. I can't remember, but like we had something else going on and we got there like kind of late, and it was like opening weekend or whatever. And my dad and I had to like sit in one of the first couple rows, and my dad was furious. And I mean, and I can count on one hand, and we weren't late to it, but we were like right there when it started. And I could count on one hand the amount of times that my dad wasn't 15 to 20 minutes late. For early for everything. My dad is early to everything, you know, being on time is being late. So I just remember that as well.
Wow. I'd love to know the some of the other parents' thoughts when they see your dad applauding a death of a cartoon character, and whether they're secretly going, "I hated him too," but
so
almost cheering from the back with it. Yeah,
yeah, it was surreal. I
mean, I can see how people didn't like him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's meant to be disliked, right? Like he's
exactly,
like that's the goal.
That is funny though. I do like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's fast forward quite a few years.
Yeah.
To kind of, the last, say 10.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know some of this, but I'll ask for people that haven't heard this sort of stuff before. But what got you back into the sort of level that you are now, into the collecting world? Not necessarily just Transformers, but what sort of, hooked you again?
So ultimately, it was character again, and the video game came out. The second one, I can never keep them straight, whether it's War for Cybertron or Fall of Cybertron. In my head, I think it's War for Cybertron is the second one, because it seems like it should go War and then Fall, but I think it goes Fall and then War, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Whatever the case may be, the second one that came out, a buddy of mine got it and was like, "You should play it. It's like it reminds you of what that franchise used to be." Yeah. So I played it and I loved it, and then that inspired me. I had MP01, I had MP Megatron, I had the MP Seekers, and I knew I was missing Grimlock and Rodimus. So but I was like, maybe there's some other stuff out there that's out that I didn't know about. Let me go ahead and get those two, and then I'll be done. So I got on eBay and put in Masterpiece Transformers, and sure enough, there was Grimlock and there was Rodimus and blah blah blah, and then there was a Masterpiece Devastator, and I was like, what? And I clicked on that, and it said, TFC Hercules Masterpiece Devastator third party. And then I started Googling third party, found all the stuff, became kind of obsessed with the cloak and dagger element of it. And then, the rest was kind of history.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew I was in trouble when I think it's Fans Toys Scoria I come across first of any. I don't think I'd seen another Masterpiece. I can't remember, but I remember seeing that going, oh, okay, they do these. Right, this could be a problem. And it was expensive, and thought I'll buy it. I tell a lie, I had bought MP10. That was my first one. Mm-hmm. And that was £220, so probably at that time, $300. And I thought, I'm going to go for it.
No need to rub that in.
No. And I remember going in on it thinking this is silly, but as soon as you open it, you think, okay. But then when I saw Fans Toys or third party, I didn't know what Fans Toys was at the time, and got Scoria. I think that it's hook line and sinker at that point. So and the rest is history. And we're still waiting for some, aren't we?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think I'll rephrase this one, because I was going to ask you what Transformers line you collect, but I think most people know you're in the sort of the G1 pocket.
Yeah.
Like myself, I've been lucky enough. I've seen your collection in person, and I'm not going to be the only one that tells you it's an impressive way you've done it, and it's a incredible layout that you've got. Do you see that bit staying that way? And G1, is that pocket gonna stay there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see myself. I'm not really interested in anything else. Even I mean, I have some other stuff. I have a little bit of IDW stuff that I really quite enjoy, specifically like the Phase 2. James Roberts, I think, which is a fellow British guy. But I love all that stuff. So I have like a Lost Light shelf and a DJD shelf and a Wreckers shelf and stuff like that. But Masterpiece G1 is kind of like my bread and butter, and I have some novelty stuff outside of that. Like I have a Hot Toys Optimus Prime, and I have a statue of Soundwave and a statue of Grimlock that mean quite a bit to me. But like the overall over under of it is, I'm pretty satisfied with what I have in that. And Transformers is just it's most of my channel, but it's just a segment of what I'm into, so like
it's a tiny part of your collection, really, when you look at it.
Exactly. Like I have I have a bigger DC Comics collection of DC comic related stuff. I have, a equal size, actually bigger Marvel collection than I have. I have a much bigger Star Wars collection than I have Transformers. Is Transformers just one of many things that I love? It's just for whatever reason, it's the thing that resonated with an audience when I talked about it. Which is and especially when you see your collection, it's surprised that the other bits. But I mean, I guess it's just different pockets. You end up in a lane, don't you? And if a lane works and it's good, you carry on. Yeah, like I'm not the smartest person in the world, but like, when I was doing a masterpiece, Prowl review, and it was getting 3,000 views, and then I was doing a Marvel Legend review, and it was getting 30 views. I kind of was able to put the pieces together. I'm not a mathematician, but I can do the simple stuff.
Right, there's a couple of quick fire ones. They're just subjective opinions, but I thought it might be interesting. What do you think is the most iconic or influential modern toy release? One that you think in Transformers, but one that it's just for your own mind, of one that you thought that's a pivotal point. I mean, I have one, maybe two, but I just thought that might be interesting.
I think two that are kind of tied for me are the Takara Sunstreaker and the Takara Inferno.
Okay.
And I think that largely, and much to my chagrin, it's not my preference of the way of doing things, but I think largely Takara, a lot of these third-party companies have allowed Takara to dictate the temperature. And with those two Takara releases, I think that they reshaped what Masterpiece is meant to be. And that's okay if it was just them, but the fact that everybody sort of like copied what they were doing, or copied is the wrong word, imitated stylistically what they were doing, I find to be a little bit less interesting. I think it's made the overall space less interesting. It seems less punk rockish now than it used to. To me, it feels more mimicky, and while it's still cool, and I still find tons of interest in it for different reasons, that those two releases, I think, shaped the future of third party, and in my opinion, not for the better. I say this all the time, and people misconstrue it that like I hate G1 or silly things that people say, but the truth is I just liked Fans Toys having their own style. I liked KFC or X-Transbots, whatever you want to call them. I liked them having their own style. I liked Make Toys having their own style. MMC had their own style. And now everybody kind of looks like they're tracing the same lines. And I just find that less interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it merges it all into one, doesn't it? And it's, and there's not as much personality as there with whether it's character or company. It's all trying to be the same thing.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that they're bad. I don't think that they're bad. I just think that they're less interesting than what they used to be. Yeah, no, I get that. I think if you lined them all up, from start to finish, you would see a change. Obviously, a change, but if you think about just design, I think you'd see a simplification, wouldn't you? Without a doubt. And I think that a lot of that can be chalked up to those two releases. Sunstreaker for the tune look and then the hyper articulation, which some companies have done a better job with than others, and then Inferno with this needs to look like it was off the Sunbow scale chart or GTFO.
Yeah, that complete smooth kind of aesthetic. Yeah, no, I get it. And I think you've probably answered my next one. I was going to go on a just influential company, but I would have thought it's the same, isn't it? They're the one that... Yeah,
it's Takara. It's easily Takara, and I don't think they should be, because I think actually I think other companies were doing more interesting things. They just allowed Takara to dictate, but I mean, I get it also, right? Because Takara is the standard setting company, so I get it. I do understand it conceptually, but I hate following, man. Like in general.
Yeah, cool. All right, I was going to pivot a little bit to something in the same era, but something slightly different. Is what I kind of enjoy. I think more is around the community aspects of all this. You clearly have built a community yourself through your channel and your Patreon and all that. And one of the things that keeps me interested as much in all this is meeting new people, going to events, going to conventions, going to all that stuff, and meeting, new people through it who you might not be able to talk to your older friends about this because they might not be interested. And I was just going to get, and again, you've spoke about this a lot, but just for if there's new people listening, but what thoughts around that and the community and conventions and some memories around your favorite parts of that kind of, just asking about that really, what you love about the community and not so much the toys.
Yeah, well, I found out pretty early that I wanted to talk about this stuff with people that cared. And it's kind of, that can be challenging. I think a lot of people you can find people that will humor you. They'll humor you to talk about it, but that wasn't really what I was looking for. It's actually rarely what I'm looking for. But I'm often looking for pretty intense engagement with human beings. And I wanted it. So I started to reach out to people pretty early on to get advice. So I posted on a pretty popular message board related to the fandom, and I said, hey, I want to get people together. Is anybody doing it? Has anybody done it? And if so, do you have any advice? And where? Maybe I can make it. And basically people wrote back and were like, don't try it. Just give it up now. You won't do it. People will argue over the location. People will beef over, whether it's in this part of the states or that part of the states, or, whether it's in down south in this state or up north in that state or whatever the case may be. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I have to do it myself then, right? I can't, nobody's doing it. So, so I think I started making it a little personal. I think, and it's like a gift and a curse in some regards, but I would shout people out in the reviews, if somebody has, I say now, get in tight on the head sculpt for Dennis, right? Dennis is somebody I know, I've met through this stuff. So now I'm shouting him out because he once said, hey, could you get in a little closer on the head sculpt? So now we get in tight on the head sculpts for Dennis, my buddy Billings, who I've met through this, Billings wanted a butterfly joint. He doesn't think that we should accept figures without a butterfly joint. So now it's a Billify joint, right? And I started making these personal connections to people, and then I started kind of gathering people together, and it started off very small, and it has kind of consistently grown. And I think that I have been very open, and I think that has made people connect to me. And I think, to be honest, anytime that anyone is authentically and genuinely themselves, that it registers with people on some sort of primal level, and people are attracted to that in some way. And it has, I think, brought a lot of people to me in some regard, where I haven't had to go out and do the legwork necessarily to find people. But you mentioned the Patreon, and I try not to make that an advertising thing all the time. But a lot of people join that platform for the toys, and then within 6 months write me and say, I joined for the reviews, or I joined for Sit Down Saturday. I don't watch any of that anymore. It's everything else that completely has my attention. And they're shocked by it, and I think that has to do with just how open and honest and sort of interesting other aspects of my life are that people don't truly understand. And then they do, and then they kind of get into it, and then I've always made a conscious effort to give back, always. So at the last convention that I attended in the States, I rented out a venue after the show and catered it, and then invited everybody that was part of my platform to that event on my dime. No entry fee, no nothing. Just allow me to do this for you. And I think I've been good to people, and I think the people that get that are very appreciative and pay it back in droves. You know, in spite of what they, you know, read about me on different comments or message boards, you know.
And I can adhere to all of that. I think the event after the convention, I wasn't there, but I did, you know, saw and read and heard of all the feedback, and it looked like a great event.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'll be another one to say about the content that on the Patreon, for example. The toy bits are, unless it's a specific one that I'm waiting to hear something, that's lower down the list than the other episodes or shows, or however you want to call it. They're lower down,
right.
And when certain ones are released, it's either on my, you know, listening to while I'm walking playlist, or they're just for when I'm working. But they're the ones, and it's maybe mainly because it's more audio than some of the visual stuff, but that's the stuff I prefer.
A lot of
exactly that. Yeah,
a lot of that stuff that I'm doing over there is more, and this sounds pretentious, and I don't mean it to be, but it is more artistic in its in its expression, and the body of work that I'm creating there means a lot to me. In some ways, I think it's the most meaningful stuff I've ever done, and it's one of the, you know, aside from my children, it's one of the things that I'll leave behind that will mean the most to others. And that's unfortunately publicly, that's all I can say about some of that stuff. But the kitchen table is one of those things. If you check it out,
yeah, absolutely, I'd agree with all of that. Okay, well, you mentioned art, and I was going to just have a little bit on artwork. So, again, a lot of people will probably know, but if they don't, art is another side of your repertoire, from toy reviews and from talking. And again, I can see one from where I am, and I've got multiple other bits around, but which are, you know, very good and love them. But how, why, when did you start in a drawing?
Yeah, so I mean,
where did that come from?
So I've been drawing since I was a kid. I remember being in elementary school and going outside and seeing like the kids with natural talent, you know, the kids that were like born, you know, Mozarts and Rembrandts, and thinking to myself like, man, I suck, you know, like I'm not good, like, but I would like to be. Yeah. You know, and it was just something that I continued to work at until I get to a point where I'm kind of comfortable. I wouldn't say happy with any of it, but I'm comfortable with some of it. And then I had some, you know, there were some people that I knew locally that it was like a news spread of like these like local first responders that had all got cancer or something. They were like, it was a weird thing because like so many got it. And so I did this like piece of Ratchet, Inferno, and Red Alert, and I like had it made up on these mugs, and I like went to these places and I was like, you know, can you introduce me to so and so, and I can hand them this as a gift, and it said fight on the other side, right? Yeah. Well, they ended up throwing like a benefit for one of the guys, and they auctioned off my drawing, like my original drawing, like as part of the thing, and it made like $200. Now, of course, people are looking to spend money. I didn't sell it for $200 because they valued the work at $200. People are looking to help out, but it gave me the motivation and inspiration to do something in an effort to give back, but also in an effort to just grow my business, right? So if I'm being honest, and so I started that first. I started the drawing side of it all first, and you know, and then every year we try to make a charitable donation to, you know, different places. We've done a lot of mostly public service, Wounded Warriors, or National Fallen Firefighters, concerns of police survivors, education thing with nurses. We did one time. Like we've tried to be, you know, I don't know, of some benefit or some, you know, help to people that want to be part of something larger than themselves.
Yeah, which is a great thing to do. And I say, anyone listening, when you see it, or it's very, you know, it's good stuff. There's I try to think how many pieces you've produced. It's in the 20, 30, 40s up to 50, isn't it? I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's so much, in fact, that like we're retiring stuff now, like where like, you know, there's no more being made of it. Is, you know, like we have different versions of Soundwave in the tapes, for instance. So like the older one is like phasing out, and when the last bit of that merch is gone, then no more of that will ever, you know, get made again. Yeah. You know, that kind of stuff.
I guess it's logistic though, isn't it? Because if you can't, you can't have everything available forever, because it's especially the way that kind of thing is produced en masse. You can't, you know, one-offs of these things are very hard to come by, really, aren't they, at a reasonable price? So you can't have your house full of 10 different items of every drawing. It's not possible, is it?
100%.
No, it's good. Well, the more you can, hope you continue it, because it's good to see. Yeah, and I say I have my fair share of pieces around.
You do.
Yeah. So I like that. I have one question. I wanted to just end that art bit with a question that is just silly, but so the National Art Gallery in Washington phone you up and they say, Bobby, we've got a Transformers section and we need a piece. We need something to put up. But you can only have one. We don't care which one it is, but you can only send one, and it'll be there forever. It will never go down. It'll be like the Mona Lisa of the National Gallery of Art. What one you picking?
What's interesting, you know, if it has to be Transformers, it's interesting because like what I think is my best is different than. So like I have a.
You can have two. You can have a Transformers and what you think's your best. But they're not like, it's complicated. So like to me, art is. It needs to be an expression of something. So like 99.9% of what I do are just drawings in my mind. Very, very few of it is art in any way, shape, or form. But like, you know, like one of the few Transformer ones that I did that I was actually trying to express some sort of idea was one that I did of Jetfire, Skyfire, however you define that character, but where like he's in the thinker's pose and he's like sitting on, you know, the Decepticon rock, and only because it's supposed to, that did express something to me about like, you know, choosing your destiny a bit. But most of what I do in that space, I don't necessarily consider art. I'm just drawing it because I think the characters are cool and I want to make them look cool for other people. Really, you know, I wish it was more to it than that, but it's. I just moved and I'm holding that said image on a coaster.
Yeah.
There you go. I thought I had it, and I thought, I know that I've got that one.
So and like I think that's far from my best, you know, especially some of this stuff I've been doing recently. I'm like quite proud of, like, you know, I redid the Blaster tapes, I redid Soundwave tapes, I did a bunch of combiners recently. I really like the Predacons I did recently. I'm really, really proud of that stuff, but none of it is really an expression of anything, where that Jetfire is actually one of the few that I've done that is actually, it is trying to express some idea. Whether or not it's successful or not is, you know, up for debate, but it came from somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, we'll start the campaign. We'll get it in. It'll be in the gallery in Washington soon. Watch this space.
Let's hope not.
Yeah. All right. Cut to finish off, because we won't go too much longer. I guess these are just finishing off questions. But what do you or what would you want to see moving forward for Samsformers? Whether it's just in the whole, is there something except we want Dead End, you know, that we're never going to get? But, but is there something, if you were going to go and see Hasbro or Takara and go, I think you should do this?
It's hard, man, because like I think what makes sense for business doesn't make sense for what I want, you know. But I want the obscure, you know. I want TFUKCons. I want more Target Masters. I want, you know, Headmaster Juniors. I want, you know, I want stuff like that, and you know, the Spark Bots or whatever those things were called. Like I want like kind of obscure stuff, and I, you know. But, you know, the sun don't shine if sun don't shine. So, like, I get it. Like nobody's going, you know, for every Optimus Prime they could make, or for every Fangry they could make, they could sell 20 Optimus Primes. So like, how do you explain that to a business, that wants to make money? I'm as guilty of it, like how many Fangries have I drawn to try to sell, I'm as guilty of it as anybody, so I get it. But I would like to see more obscure, and I would like to see more, not super stylized stuff. People have a hard time understanding the nuance when I talk about that sort of thing, but not stylized in the sense of it being off from G1, stylized in the sense of this is this company's style on G1. I would like to see a little bit more of that, but I think that's not likely either. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, which we may have had more in the past, but is now, as we said earlier, merging into one kind of the same pot, isn't it? So I get it. Okay, I mean, I think that's great. And I know we've touched on it a couple of times, but do you want to plug your stuff? I mean, I'm openly admit I'm a proud member of the Patreon, and I would say to anyone to join it. But do you want to just take a minute or two, just go over what your thoughts on it, and without giving away what's on it, but the kind of style of what's in there?
I think that if people are interested, they'll find it. They'll seek it out. So I usually just say if you're looking for me, I'd start with your girl's DMs first.
Fair play.
I say it jokingly only because people go on and on and on about this is my and I'm on Facebook and this is all that, and I usually find that sort of stuff exhausting. So
that's fine. But I like that. Well, I'll say it. It's out there. Check it out. If you like the channel, the YouTube channel, there's a lot more interesting stuff on there. Mm-hmm. And arguably, well, not arguably, but even too much of it to keep up sometimes. But that is a positive. For the.
I will say about that like when I set that stuff up, my goal was that it would be kind of like Netflix in a way that like you wouldn't be able to watch all of it, or you wouldn't be able to listen to all of it. You'd kind of have to pick and choose what were your favorites, and so that was my goal. So to hear you say that, it's like mission accomplished.
It is, because I mean, I can't, that's dramatic, but I don't consume all of it. And I've picked a few of the lanes that I like the most and go with them. And then when they're gone, I go on to some of the others. So it's a good way of doing it. So
I appreciate it.
Okay, well, we'll do there. So again, Bobby, thank you so much for taking the time to join me and attempt my first interview.
You're good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. You're always welcome on any of this. So we'll finish it there. TFUKCon is soon. I hope to see everyone there. We've got lots of good things lined up. Lots of guests. We just announced a new guest today. A certain Sam that you might know, Bobby, is joining us. So he's going to be there as well. So if you're listening to this, you're either on your way, you're there, or you've been. Yeah. So I hope it's been a good time. And for that, we'll go. So take it easy.
Oi, oi.